Welcome to the Illuminating Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Marcia Narayan Weldon, and I'm a lawyer, business strategist, corporate trainer, and executive coach. Each week, I'm going to bring you my favorite entrepreneurs, thought leaders, legal professionals, and other coaches who will inspire, educate, and empower you. Today, you'll hear from Mitch Jackson, a lawyer with 30 years of experience who works at the intersection of law, business, and technology. Get ready to discover the art of storytelling and the power of connection as Mitch shares his insights on how to stand out from the crowd and build a successful career in law or business. And he should know, since he's spoken at Tony Robbins' Business Mastery and shared expert commentary for Anderson Cooper, Katie Couric, Gary Vee, and so many others. We'll delve into the Metaverse's limitless possibilities and the transformative power of Web3, AI, and NFTs. Are you a lawyer, law student, or entrepreneur who wants to understand how this technology works from the person who literally wrote the book on it? Listen in and learn. So, Mitch, I'm so excited to have you on. You and I first met on Clubhouse, seems like years ago. You've also been a guest lecturer in my class. And here's the thing, I don't know anyone who markets themselves better than you as a lawyer. So I want to start off talking about that and about the importance of personal brand for lawyers and for business people. I think when lawyers hear the term branding, they kind of think they've got to dance on TikTok or it's unseemly and it's not professional. But as we all know, there's different ways to market and brand yourself. And I think for lawyers in a crowded universe, and we'll get to Metaverse later, it's even more important to have a brand. What are some suggestions you have for lawyers who might say, I don't know, I'm just going to stick to LinkedIn because that's where my people are?
Well, they may be right, Marcia. And by the way, it's great to be here. It's always good to see you. And I'm so glad our paths crossed on Clubhouse. And the reason they crossed on Clubhouse is because I'm not a big fan of branding and marketing. I'm a big fan of building relationships. And I think lawyers are exceptionally good at communicating and doing just that when they give themselves permission to do so. So to answer your question real quick, this is going to be my longest answer in this interview. Going back to growing up on a guest ranch in Tucson, Arizona, I watched my dad and mom build this ranch resort. We had a lot of really well-known people over the years come and visit the ranch. Walt Disney, John Wayne, Morley Safer from 60 Minutes, a lot of really famous attorneys from around the world. And I got to watch how my mom and dad interacted with them. They didn't market, they didn't brand, they had conversations. They got to know these people and they became repeat clients. When I decided it was time to go to college, go to law school, I was the first one in my family to do both, open up my own practice here in Southern California, I realized right away that there's a lot of competition out there, especially here in Orange County, California. We have some of the top trial lawyers in the world here in Orange County. And I realized I needed to get myself out there. So I started marketing and branding like all the other lawyers in town, and I wasn't standing out, Marcia. In other words, I didn't have the money and the funds to do what needed to be done to build my brand. What I started to do, and I rode and raced motocross back in the day, is I started getting together each Wednesday morning with 5 or 6 other lawyers, 2 judges, and we'd ride and do laps around the track on Wednesday mornings. Wow. I started to notice connections being formed, referrals taking place. It's because we had something in common, something away from the law that we could just relax, let our hair down, and enjoy time together. I then took that approach to doubling down on hobbies, interests, and passions, coupling that with digital, social media, live video, podcast interviews, and today the Web3 environments to build more connections and more relationships with people that had things in common. That's how you and I connected. We were on social audio, enjoying the ability to share our thoughts and comments and answer questions to the consumer. So the long answer to your question is I realized to build a practice, to build a brand, to do the things I wanted to do, you've got to become known. And you got to become known for the right reasons. It's never been easier and inexpensive to leverage the platforms that we're leveraging, whether it's audio, video, whether it's the metaverse, to do just that, to add value as a lawyer, to build your brand as somebody that wants to make the world a better place. And by doing that, by highlighting others and solving and fixing problems, what then happens is, for example, we're in Southern California. When I have someone on the other side of the country or the other side of the world with a California case, guess who they call? So it's a little trick that I learned from my mom and dad way back when. Build relationships, add value, keep giving and giving and giving some more. And in the end, that's how you can build a very well-known, successful practice. You can turn your brand from local to global.
And you are one of the best trial lawyers in the country. So people that don't know that need to look you up. But I want to talk to you about so many other things. You also have a podcast, and I recently listened to one of your podcast episodes, and you talked about the importance of communication. And this is something that whether you're a lawyer, a business person, a law student, effective communication is the key. What are some of the, for those people who haven't listened to it yet, and I am going to put the link in the show notes, what are some of the top tips that you learned from that recent interview? And for those people who are listening, we're recording at the end of April, so they may be listening 5 years from now, but you just recently did this interview.
Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, it's intimidating to be on this show with you, Marcia. You are a much better communicator because I've listened to you and watched you do your thing, right? And I didn't grow up learning how to communicate. So it's something I'm self-taught. And over the last 37 years of practicing law, I've watched really good litigators and trial attorneys do their thing. And I've tried to pick apart what works and what doesn't. Storytelling is critically important. Learning how to tell a story, not instructing a jury what they need to do or what they need to know, but sharing and teaching through the art of storytelling, incorporating the careful use of metaphors in your jury selection process, in your opening statement. If we're talking about social media, live video, social audio, or in the metaverse where our avatars are interacting with each other using voice. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's doing these things in a way where you're creating unique, interesting, and memorable experiences for the other person or the other group of people. I think learning how to use voice inflection when doing so makes a difference. Learning how to complement what we're saying with images and videos and audios, especially in the metaverse, because it's very easy to do, to help tell that story, to remember that it's all about emotions. It's all about how we make other people feel. It's how we can empower people to do these things so that my client finds justice at the end of a 2-week trial. I think moving forward today, and we're going to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, Chat GPT 3.5 or maybe Chat GPT 4. There's another company out there I'm really excited about. It's called Copilot, which is AI just for lawyers. And we can talk about that. It's about figuring out what's that message you want to share. Use these AI tools to help you craft that message in a compelling, persuasive storytelling fashion. Tell the AI to incorporate some metaphors into your 2-paragraph response, and then take that content, put your personality into it when you stand up in front of an audience of 1 or 1,000 to then use this technology to deliver a more effective and persuasive story. So that's how I've approached this. The tools that I highly recommend. I absolutely love Carmine Gallo's book, Talk Like TED. Carmine contributed a chapter to one of my past books. And what Carmine did is he interviewed the top 200 TED speakers. What makes them so effective? What allows them to build rapport and connect with their audience? And he breaks it down. And years ago, when I got the book, I mean, I reached out and introduced myself to Carmine because I was so impressed with the content that he was sharing. And we've since become friends. Is I use these approaches when I'm doing shows with people like you, when I'm mediating a case or in front of a mediator, or trying a case in front of the court or a jury. These tips and tools work. Storytelling, metaphors, and using the approaches that Carmine shares in his book, Talk Like TED. That's where I would start. That's what I would do. That's worked really well for me over the years.
And I think it's interesting because some people that might be listening might be lawyers and say, you know what, I'm a corporate lawyer. This is not for me. And I think that could not be further from the truth, because when you're telling a business person something, you've got to bring it to what does it do for them? How does it relate to them? And sometimes telling stories, and I've heard the expression that facts tell and stories sell. And then I also heard a person yesterday, his name is Andy Enriquez. He's a speaking coach. And he said, never tell a story without a point and never make a point without telling a story. And I think those are really, really important. I know I wanted to give it credit to him. I was like, I'm not going to steal that one. But it's really true, because sometimes lawyers would think we have to be so dry and to the point and just focus on the law. And people don't think like that. People remember the stories. You could give a 30-minute speech, but they remember that 2-minute story. And that's when you really make your point. And you've also been talking about, please,
Marcia, to that point, excuse me for interrupting, but it's critically important. What you just said is how 98% of the lawyers think they need to engage in their everyday activities. Okay. Right. In other words, if you do what everyone else in town is doing, if you're a corporate lawyer practicing corporate law, trying to fit in like everyone else, that's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to blend in. Right. You're not going to stand out. And it's going to be a challenge for you to build your career, your brand, or even your practice. If you give yourself permission to be different and tap into these storytelling approaches like what we're talking about, that's right. how you stand out. That's how you make people feel warm and fuzzy about who you are, what you're doing, and the value you bring to the table. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because yes, just because everybody else is doing something a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way. And improving on our communication skills. And by the way, I've never been accused of being the sharpest knife in the drawer. Okay, this isn't something that I was good at in high school or college, and I'm still not. I'm learning. But if I can do this, anyone can. And here's the last success tip. It doesn't matter if you can put together a clear and concise sentence. It doesn't matter if you use improper grammar. If you're speaking from the heart, if you're sincere and passionate about what you're trying to share with a jury or with a mediator, that's what connects us. Nobody's perfect. And Marcia, I've seen so many good lawyers get so wrapped up on using the correct words or putting together a proper sentence that they're disconnecting from their audience. That's not what's important. Speaking from the heart, whether we're in court, whether we're on social media, whether we're in the metaverse, that's what connects us. That's what's worked for me. Thank God, because if that didn't work, we wouldn't be here today. So it's
speaking of us being here today, you've mentioned it a few times, metaverse. Now, I want you to use one of your expressions from your book, because by the way, and I'll make sure I get this right, you've literally written the book on Web3, Metaverse, and the AI handbook. And so for much of the world, including software developers and knowledge workers, are terrified, but you're in the excited camp. And then you have a whole bunch of the rest of the world that doesn't know enough to be either terrified or excited. Let's use your term of explain it like a fourth grader. Let's start with Metaverse. Explain it like a fourth grader, because in Mitch's book, if those of you haven't read it yet, he explains it. Then he says, now I'm going to explain it like a fourth grader, which I love. So go ahead.
Each chapter has a section, explain it to me as a fourth grader. And I was keynoting at a lawyer event in Toronto. We had 30 different countries around the world, 25 different states in the United States. And my closing keynote was about the Web3, AI, and the metaverse. And what I realized is a lot of the lawyers, the managing partners in the audience, didn't understand the terminology that I was using. So when I came back home, I grabbed my son, who just graduated from the Marshall School of Business at USC, and I said, Garrett, we need to put together a book, a quick read where a senior partner, a managing partner, can read a chapter in 5 or 10 minutes and have a good working understanding of what the metaverse is. What's a smart contract? What's the blockchain? What is artificial intelligence? That was the purpose of the book. We tapped into AI, ChatGPT, to help us organize, lay out, and even write parts of the book. And in fact, our AI assistant that we affectionately named Kai the AI is listed as a co-author in the book.
Oh, I love it.
Having said, we're trying to walk our talk, right? It's like, okay, let's go ahead and use this technology. But we also want to be transparent about it. And the metaverse is simply a virtual or digital depiction of how you feel your world is. How would you like to portray who you are, what you do, maybe as a lawyer, the types of products and services that you're sharing? How can you depict that and portray that in a virtual environment? And so the metaverse platforms that we're using are platforms that I think reflect a high level of quality, a fantastic first impression. You don't look like you're walking through a Lego built room with little kids pulling on your pant leg looking for your attention. These are quality, beautiful spaces that, I had a tech client up in LA come down and not come down, but was supposed to come down for an interview, but it was raining. And Marcia, when it rains here in Southern California, everybody freaks out. Everything shuts down. So my team said, listen, why don't you throw on your headset and meet with Mitch in our virtual office space? Great, let's do that. Within 60 seconds of them coming into the space and me starting my spiel, Mitch, stop talking. You're our guy. This is amazing.
Right.
You're the lawyer we've been looking for. So what I found is it creates new business opportunities. It creates new branding and marketing opportunities. When somebody gets done with a meeting with a lawyer, it's normally not a memorable event. They don't want to tell their family, friends, and neighbors about it. When they come out of a virtual experience with us, I know because they've told me, I can't wait to tell my next door neighbor about meeting my lawyer in the metaverse. It's just a unique way of creating new experiences that I think consumers are using and benefiting from. And once you learn how to use these platforms correctly, you can bring up videos, slide decks, images. You can examine potential pieces of evidence with expert witnesses on the other side of the country or world by actually manipulating it with your hand, handing it to you. Mitch, turn it over. This is where the defective product broke or failed. It just offers an entirely new and better way to interact when you can't meet in real life. I'd much rather sit across the lunch table with you, Marcia, and have lunch and chat. I'm a people person, but when that's not possible, and I think based upon what we've been through with COVID, the consumer is more comfortable with remote interactions. Number one, we have 5G technology that allows anyone that's connected to the internet to participate in these platforms. All you need is your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your desktop, or a headset, and you're good to go. I think when you look at all of those things, plus the ease and ability of using a metaverse platform, it's just like using this platform. Riverside is
Right.
just like using Zoom. You send a link, a client can click, it can be public or private, and you're good to go. So that's what the
So
metaverse
I'm
is. That's how
I'm
we're
gonna
using
play
it.
old. I'm gonna play old crotchety partner. Why can't I just use Zoom? And here's what I'd like you to do, Mitch. I know I've seen your demo of Metaverse. For those of you driving in your car, you can't see this, but you should come back and look at the
Ooh.
video. But if you're doing your laundry or cooking dinner, you should come and see. And Mitch, I'd like you, if you don't mind, share your screen, show us a little bit about what we're talking about, and kind of walk us through it, because you're gonna have to be really, make it visual for the people who are listening as they're driving.
Well, I would love to. Is this showing up on your
It's
screen? I just
about
shared
to.
it.
I see the little dots. I think it's going to come up. Here's what happens when you do things live. Sometimes the tech will work, sometimes it won't. But
Well,
as
let
we're
me try
waiting
it
for it to
again.
come up, how can you imagine business people using it? You've talked about lawyers, and lawyers are always generations behind business people. But how would you imagine? There we go. Get your heliport.
So here's the thing. I think it's really important that we meet clients where they would like to be met, or once they're informed as to what their options are, they realize as a lawyer, you're presenting a new opportunity they hadn't even thought about. You're already
Right.
adding value to the table. And one of the most important questions that we ask new clients is, once we're retained, once we're done, before they leave the office, before they leave the Zoom, before they leave our metaverse meeting, is how would you like us to communicate with you? We stop talking and we start listening. And if they want to communicate with us on Instagram DMs or email or snail mail, that's how we try to accommodate our clients. I think smart business owners do the same thing. So what we're looking at here, for those of you that can see the video, is our penthouse suite overlooking Miami. And one of the things that we do is we have a downstairs studio or movie room, and I'm trying to show everyone. Up here is on a screen. We can show videos, we can do PowerPoints, we can have conversations. People can sit, they can watch what's going on. And as you see, the graphics are gorgeous. Let's
Mm-hmm.
overlook the city of Miami real quick.
And it's so funny. When I first saw this, I said, that looks like Miami, but Mitch is in Southern California. I'm sure they have beautiful views there. So, because of course I'm in
Absolutely.
Miami. And I said, that looks very much like it could be Miami. How
So
interesting.
and it is, and you can have venues set up to suit your personality. For example, I love to snow ski, so oftentimes what we do is after we're meeting in a traditional corporate office space or in a conference room, if I hit it off with the client, I happen to know they're a skier, I'll say, listen, now that we're done, would you like to join me in my ski chalet for a digital hot toddy? They're like, what are you talking about? And I said, let me show you. And so I'll click a button and bring up a portal, much as what you can see in front of you right now. These are portals. If you click the portal, it instantly transports you to your next metaverse spot. And right now, what we're doing is we're transporting in real time to our ski chalet. And once we get into the ski chalet, there's music playing in the background. And here we are. And I don't know if the music's picking up at your end.
I can hear it.
But,
I can hear it.
Okay, but I want everyone to
That's
kind
a
of
really
see how
nice
this
chalet.
looks. It's just gorgeous. And once again, there is a downstairs media room where you can show client videos, how-to videos, or if you're like me, you can just, share ski videos. There's an upstairs that you can go to. There's a hot tub upstairs, lots of cool places to go to. And, that's really what the metaverse is all about. We also have, let me stop here and come back to you. I want to be here with you. We also have a corporate facility, which is just a gorgeous corporate campus where we meet with a lot of our business clients. We hold seminars. We actually are thinking about later on this year subleasing out office space for other lawyers that really don't want to take the time and trouble to figure this out. We just want to set them up with a link where they can come in and set up their own virtual space. And by the way, it's just a beautiful space that clients rave about once they're in there. So that's just a small taste of what the metaverse is. For those of you listening, sharing what the metaverse is like trying to give somebody a haircut over the telephone. It's impossible, right? You actually have to see it and come in. And if you put a headset on, it'll knock your socks off. So that's why we're so excited about these spaces.
And so there's a lot of skeptics out there, but I actually, like I said, we're filming this the end of April 2023. Yesterday, I spent the day at the Emerge Americas tech conference in Miami. Huge tech conference. Tom Brady was the keynote speaker, that kind of tech conference. Last year was Alex Ohanian and Serena Williams. And you have a lot of early stage, mid stage, and late stage, plus a lot of law firms, bankers, etc. And what was interesting is how much virtual reality, AR, VR was being shown. So for people think, this is not going to happen. This is no big thing. This is just Mitch on some crazy tangent. I think people miss out if they don't at least pay attention and get educated, as opposed to saying it's a passing fad. So now let's talk about Web3. I'm sorry, did you want to say something else?
Well, leading into Web3, Marcia, look, here's the thing. One of the reasons I've been able to build a global brand on the digital platforms is I was early. I actually felt like, okay, back in 95, we put up our first website. 8 months later, we had $1 million case come through the website. Once again, I'm not the brightest bulb in the lamp, but I'm like, there's something to this internet thing. Fast forward to video and social media. I came in early, and it's allowed us to take that one-to-one interaction that used to exist only across our desk to a 1 to 1,000, 1 to 10,000, 1 to 100,000 type of interactions, whether it's recorded or live. And it allowed me, I think, and other lawyers to really show the consumer that we're human beings and that we care. And indirectly, yes, you can build business. When it's all said and done, I'm a businessman, okay? What happens at the end of the year, end of year revenue, that matters to me. I wouldn't be wasting my time if all right. Having said all that, I've never seen more opportunity and more excitement from a legal perspective, whether it's marketing, branding, or client development, than I've experienced over the last year in Web3, artificial intelligence, and the metaverse. There's a reason why every Fortune 500 company is spending money in all three of these spaces. The metaverse was hot for a while, and then it's cooled off primarily because artificial intelligence has kind of rolled out in an easy to use platform fashion. I get it. Having said that, I do see the metaverse as being something, Marcia, that over the next 3 to 5 years, it is going to be the preferred platform for client interactions. It's just that.
You heard it here first.
Oh, I'm not even, and so by playing in these digital sandboxes today, you allow yourself and your team and your firm to get comfortable with how do you maneuver an avatar? How do you speak through an avatar? How do you have your avatar use anchor points, working the room from the left to the right, as opposed to just remaining still and boring? And so by playing in these spaces now, you can learn how to do the things you need to know how to do so that as mass adoption happens, and it will, you'll be prepared and you'll be in front of the crowd. You'll be the firm that everyone's talking about. That's why you see me doing what I'm doing in these spaces. I feel the same way about artificial intelligence. I feel the same way about Web3, where what we're talking about is decentralized platforms. We're talking about smart contracts, non-fungible tokens. I'm not talking about things like Bored Ape and CryptoPunks. What I'm talking about is technology that really allows you to automate everything we do as lawyers so that there's a trust factor, a verification factor, and it's happening almost instantly in real time. This technology is already changing the world, and it's going to allow us as lawyers to create better products and services for our clients. It's going to allow us to deliver faster and better, more accurate results, and at a price point less expensive because it's going to take less time than ever before. I remember lawyers telling me before the internet, Mitch, why are you using this thing called a dial-up modem to go to something called a bulletin board where you actually have to code to access the internet, right? Then the web browsers came around and made it very easy for everyone to do all the above. Then high-speed internet came around. And now, can you imagine practicing law right now without somehow directly or indirectly taking advantage of and leveraging the internet, leveraging the different digital platforms that we have access to? Late 80s, I show up for a jury trial. The morning break, I'm setting up what was a laptop back then to do a PowerPoint presentation. It wasn't PowerPoint, but it was a similar type of program. It might have been before PowerPoint. And I wanted to use it for my opening statement. And a judge, it was just a judge and I in the courtroom, and the bailiff and the clerk. Mr. Jackson, what is that? Well, I explained what it was. You're not using that in my courtroom. I don't know what that is. You're not using it, right? Okay, fast forward to today. Can you imagine walking into almost any type of litigation or trial situation without technology? It would probably be malpractice, right? And so
Absolutely.
I see the same thing happening with the technology that you and I are playing with right now. That's going to be the norm. If you're not using AI for research and assisting your clients with the litigation and trial process, if you're not leveraging some of the other things that we're already talking about, you'll probably be found to have not met the standard of care as a lawyer when it comes to research, writing, how you manage and represent and handle your clients' cases. It's just one of those things where the earlier you get involved, I think the better off you're going to be in the long run. And I'm going to keep my answers a lot shorter moving forward.
That's all right. That's okay.
I'm sorry. I just get really excited about this.
I know. And I want to make sure, though, that that our listeners really understand what Web3 is and how it's different than Web2. And some people might have said, I didn't even know there was a Web1. So, and it's funny that you talk about the dial-up modem. I was in law school and I was using CompuServe, right? And this is in the 90s. I remember saying, oh my gosh, to my roommate, I can look up a recipe for spaghetti and meatballs. I would literally, the dial-up modem would happen. I'd go in the kitchen. I would come back. 10 minutes later, it's up. And I'm excited. Yeah. And now you're on a plane and people are like, the Wi-Fi doesn't work on the plane. And I'm thinking, you're in a tube floating across the sky. It's lucky the plane doesn't fall out the sky. How could you be upset about the lack of Wi-Fi, right? And so we think about these things. So how do you differentiate Web3 versus Web2? You talked about something being decentralized, but let's break it down like a fourth grader.
Well, which is what it comes down to, is it's a decentralized type of concept. Whether or not that actually really happens, that's another show for another time. But it's the ability where we own our own data, where we own our own profiles, our own branding. What's going to be happening is, for those of you familiar with NFTs or non-fungible tokens, just think of it as a ticket or a key or a piece of software that you're going to be carrying around with you on your smartphone, on your wallet, maybe even embedded in your sunglasses. And it's going to be able to allow you to go to a site and, through a tap, a touch, a click, whatever it may be, maybe it's through Bluetooth, instantly connect to that site, and all of your data that you've given permission to share. When I'm talking with Marcia in 5 years, what she and I would like to have communicated to our audience, it's going to be available. It's right there.
Right.
And it's going to be transferable easily without too much friction between platforms A, B, C, D, and E. Right now, we have to log into each platform independently. Corporations own our data. This is flipping all of that upside down theoretically. and making it so that we're in control of our public and private data using these simple to use NFTs. Maybe they'll be called something else in the future,
right.
tokens,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what we call it. And just really making the use of digital faster and easier. And the technology is there. We're already using it at the firm. Okay. We're assigning NFTs to tech clients, and it gives them, they can unlock them, and it gives them access to a private CRM. It gives them access to our weekly private client videos or audio shows or one-on-ones with me. It's just another way of sharing this information. And I'm telling you, it's interesting to me when we see this technology being used in the legal services arena, Marcia, where what's going to be happening is we'll be filing lawsuits where we'll basically be clicking and importing the data into an NFT. The NFT is going to be linked to a court database that instantly files the document electronically, serves it on opposing counsel, sets out a discovery schedule and hearing schedule with the court, depending on the type of case, type of matter, and it's all going to happen instantly. It's smart contracts will be using our data in our NFTs with the proprietary court databases and instantly handling all the above. So it'll be on the blockchain, whether it's a public blockchain or a private court sponsored blockchain, where no more will we have to worry about, well, I didn't get that letter, or counsel never sent me that pleading, or my client never did sign that, receive that document to sign it. It's all
didn't get the notice.
It's going to be there via smart contract, and it's going to help us actually, I think, practice law better. It's going to help all of us double down on being truthful, on being honest, on authenticity, on foundation issues, by the way, which is a huge concern right now, and be more efficient. And so that's where we're going. And Web3 type of decentralized blockchain smart contract technology is going to get us there. We don't need to know how all of this works. I want everyone to think about this. When you walk into your office and flip the light switch, what happens? The lights come on. You don't have to know how the electricity is generated, how it's transported or wired into your building, how all of this works. What you're going to want to know how to do is when you tap or use a bio recognition of your NFT, everything just works, and it works correctly, efficiently, and accurately. That's why I'm so excited about this technology.
So now let's talk about something that people are both excited and terrified about: AI, artificial intelligence. And interestingly, last maybe September, October, Microsoft reached out to me and they said, we'd like you to come and speak at our tech conference in Portugal about business and human rights. And I started putting things together. Then the ChatGPT-3 came out, right? And I was like, all right. I got there in February, did it, and I talked about it. And I talked about what some of the ethical issues might be for jobs, for knowledge workers, for access to justice, for the concept of hallucinations, which is basically when the generative AI may come up with things that look completely legitimate but aren't. And after I got off the stage, I was thinking, wow, this is a crazy new world, but I'm excited. And then I got an email from people in the university. We're having a meeting to talk about this because what's happening? What if our students start to cheat? What if they plagiarize? What if they do all of these things? And there was panic in the streets, not just, at universities around the land. And I started thinking, what does this mean for people being able to be curious? My son is an artist, and he, there's artworks. And I know you've shown some artworks on your own site. And then now we have ChatGPT-4. And so what I've done is I've asked ChatGPT-4 to create some questions for me to ask you, Mitch. So these are ChatGPT-4 questions. I will say, interestingly, when I went to Microsoft, because they did the presentation and we went to their headquarters in Lisbon, and there were three of us talking about human rights, we started preparing our remarks using that version of ChatGPT. Now, because we knew enough about the topic, we knew what was right and what wasn't right. And that, I think, is one of the big dangers, that people will sit there, put things in there, and they won't know. And it's like, this looks fantastic. And I don't know if you saw 60 Minutes this Sunday when they looked at Google and Bard. And it's really interesting. And at the very end, Scott Pelley, the commentator, says, I'm going to say something that you're going to probably start hearing in the future. This content is 100% generated by human beings. But how do people know? And I want to talk about something that's been in the news the past couple of days, because you also know a lot about intellectual property, the fake Drake. the Weeknd AI. So Drake, obviously the hip hop artist, and the Weeknd. There are now AIs that are coming out and sounding exactly like them, and the streaming services have had to put them off. So here's one of the questions that the ChatGPT 4 came up for you. How do you foresee the intersection?
This is Mitch Jackson versus ChatGPT. All right, bring it on.
No, I know questions. I said, I would like you to create questions for me to ask Mitch Jackson, an expert in this area, about, questions that he hasn't necessarily been asked in this way before.
Yeah,
so we'll see what
absolutely.
happens. How do you foresee the intersection of AI-generated content and user-generated content in the Metaverse and Web3 impacting content creators' rights, and what legal frameworks could help to protect their interests? And I think this is particularly important as we look at works of art. I think there was an AI-generated photograph that just won a competition. Obviously, we're talking about fake Drake. So if you are a content creator or a lawyer representing a content creator, what does this mean?
What it means is traditional IP rights, copyright, trademark, right of publicity here in California, which affects the Drake situation. It all applies online. It's even more important when we're dealing with artificial intelligence generated audios, photos, and videos. What is required offline doesn't just go away because these things are being generated by artificial intelligence. So that's the first thing. With the Drake situation, when I saw that, it immediately jumped out at me. There are so many IP violations, whether it's copyright of his image, whether it's the right of publicity here in the state of California, similar in other states across the country. Lot of bad violations are taking place. It's not, to me, it's not even an argument. I mean, I'm going to win that case every time in court. But that has to go against the creator, the person that's tapping into the IT, that's violating someone else's rights, someone else's ownership rights or licensing rights. What's interesting to me, Marcia, right now is whether or not we can establish copyright and other IP rights for artificial intelligence generative content. And the general rule right now is we can't. The Copyright Office has come down more than once, right? In different rulings and different findings that's just not the case. I think it's going to change over time. But people need to understand, if you're creating content, if you're reaching out to third parties to create content for your company, or if you're a lawyer representing companies negotiating content creator contracts, this content that you're being provided, if you're using that content on an $8 million 30-second Super Bowl ad next year, you might want to know ahead of time what is copyrightable and what isn't. Can somebody just take that image, that logo, that creature that you created and make it their own? And so there's a lot of legal ramifications to everything that the ChatGPT suggested that you ask me. That's why I'm so excited being a lawyer right now, because I'm watching things change in real time. And I'm watching a lot of bad misinformation being given on Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse rooms as to what we can and can't do. Oftentimes it's somebody that's done a 15-minute Google search and now they're an expert on, AI copyright law, right? And the reality is that's a big issue right now, Marcia, as you well know. It doesn't mean that, for example, when I was in high school, using a calculator was not allowed in class. Okay. Imagine in today's world taking a chemistry or physics or math class in college and not being able to use your phone or your calculator. The same thing is happening right now with AI. It's going to be another tool that's going to open up our time, free our time to do other things as human beings, and it'll be more readily accessible or acceptable as we move forward in time. But there's also some dark sides to what we're talking about, and that's the scary part. Trial lawyers, how do you establish authenticity and foundation of a photo or a video or an audio recording in a court of law? How do you know it's, the person that's purportedly being recorded is actually that person? So it opens up a whole new area for expert witnesses that didn't exist until a couple of years ago. And I liken this to when the horse and buggy industry basically changed because of the automobile. And I actually wrote a blog post on that. It's almost like the printing press coming along and changing how do we copy written documents and disseminate them among among others. And this is what's happening right now, but we're struggling over what's right and wrong, what's ethically permissible, what is cheating, or what is tapping into the power of a new tool to create better results in less time. So I'm with you. I'm excited about all of this, but I also feel, especially with auto AI, in other words, AI training itself, not even needing our input, tapping into Google database, for example, or proprietary databases, answering its own questions to get to that final result that you have asked it to get to. That's, to me, is where we're going. It's a little bit scary because if you put in the wrong prompts, I'm not sure how healthy that's going to be for humanity. On the other side of the coin, I'm looking forward to this technology helping us with social issues, approaching things through a new lens, through helping with our environment. I'm getting ready to pick a jury on a wrongful death case. It's a very conservative jurisdiction. There's a lot of money damages involved. There's some news stories coming out of this particular community. So I'm using GPT-4 to help craft questions for me when picking a jury. And it's really good, by the way. I've been doing this a long time. I'm good at picking juries, but it's giving me ideas and suggestions. I'm training it to be a human factors expert, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a trained gifted trial lawyer, picking a jury in this type of conservative venue. What are the questions that I need to ask it on X, Y, and Z topics? And it's giving me new insights that I think if I spent the time, I would have come up with them, but I wouldn't have spent the time. I've got too much going on. Real talk here. And so it's helping me be a better trial lawyer because I'm going to pick a better jury, which will help guarantee my ability to maximize my chances of getting a good verdict for my client. All right, 3 more questions.
But this is the most important thing, though. You said something really important because you've been doing it for a long time, so you know what makes sense and what doesn't. And when we were talking to people about human rights issues, the 3 of us were experts in the field, and so we knew whether what ChatGPT put out made sense or not. And I'm so worried about people saying, "Looks good to me." But let's think about privacy, right? And the privacy issues. It's got, GDPR in the EU. You've got all of these other rules. So here's another question from ChatGPT-4. How do you think data privacy regulations such as the GDPR, which is, again, the EU privacy regulation, but there's, of course, millions around the world, will need to evolve to address the unique challenges posed by the metaverse, AI, and Web3 technologies? That, of course, could be an entire podcast in itself. But what kinds of things should we be thinking about? Because I worry that regulators, I teach my law students, I said, you guys are going to be the legislative aides, the law clerks, etc. You have to understand this because if people make regulations and they don't understand it, but the lobbyists for the industries go in, there's going to be all kinds of areas. And I know this because, in a former life, I used to help run my company's PAC and lobbying efforts. So I know exactly what happens. And the legislative aides, which are basically 2 years out of law school, 1 year out of law school, that may or may not know anything. How do you deal with, maybe not privacy, but how do we deal with the intersection of regulation in this area that most people don't know enough about, or what they're getting, like you said, those 15-minute Google search or a Clubhouse room or a TikTok video, and they think they're an expert?
First of all, I wish I was a student in your class because this would be a fun conversation to listen to the input of everybody else, right? So I think that if we're relying upon uninformed politicians from either side of the aisle, regulating and creating laws that are going to fix the inherent problems of what this question entails, that's not going to work out very well for any of us, for all the obvious reasons. And so, I remember walking through a large law firm's secretarial bay back when we had secretarial bays, right? Everyone's typing and answering phones and stuff. And looking as I walked by, I wasn't with that firm. I was going to take a deposition at all the proprietary information just open and exposed sitting on everyone's desk. Like I could have stopped and just, really read things I shouldn't have been reading. I'm guessing that it looks like it had been left out for days. So cleaning people can come in. I mean, what type of privacy is that? What type of, attorney-client privilege protection is that? I mean, it happens in the real world every single day, but people don't talk about it. With data, obviously, the scope and magnitude and propensity for more harm is out there. I get that. But here's the thing. This technology is here. It's not going anywhere. it's only going to get exponentially more prevalent as time goes by, frankly, because AI is going to be helping create faster and better these platforms, these services, this technology. And for those reasons, this is a big issue. Like, how are we going to manage the privacy? How are we going to manage the rights and remedies for someone that's been harmed by AI? I don't have the answer to the question. I suggest we need to ask AI, like, what are the things we need to pay attention to? How can we go about it? It's going to take some brilliant minds that aren't influenced by money. That's the first challenge, right? I don't know if that's even possible. Who are contributing at the local, state, federal, national, and international levels. And once again, I think we need to come back to our foundation. What's worked offline as far as laws and ethics? I think those same principles apply online. I asked AI to write an article for me. Does AI have emotions and feelings? And it wrote just a really good article that explained, its findings. Spoiler alert, it said that it didn't, at least as of now. But then I realized I realized I didn't even ask it if it wanted to have emotions and feelings. How rude of me, right? So I went back in and I asked it again, do you even want to have emotions and feelings? And it talked about the ability to maybe provide more meaningful responses on some prompts, some inquiries, some questions. But for the time being, it said, I'm not really interested in having emotions and feelings. What I want to do is provide you with an accurate response based upon the facts of what you're asking me about. And so it's an interesting dance. I think that's why I'm saying, Marcia, there's never been a greater need for lawyers, because I think lawyers are going to be in the trenches working all of this out through our court system. I think there's going to be a lot of litigation adjudicating all the issues you just brought up. And I think, when it's all said and done, a jury of our peers, they're going to get it right. They're going to get it right. They understand. Once you empower them to think about the ethics and the principles involved behind all of this, without lobbyists putting in money, without politicians worrying about the decisions they're making to get reelected, with the policies that they're rolling out, I think juries are going to help us form, mold, and create probably the best, rule set moving forward, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Who's going to lose their jobs, though, Mitch? Because you said 3 to 5 years from now, X is going to happen. You look at the software engineers that are in jeopardy. You look at now job descriptions. I mean, I took a training a few weeks ago just on how to write prompts, right? And so in the legal field and the business field, who's going to lose their jobs? I think Goldman Sachs said 300 million people. Of course, everybody comes up with a statistic. And of course, this makes things scarier. People read more articles, they get more scared. But how do we prepare? What do lawyers need to do? And then what are your business clients doing? Are they taking in AI?
I addressed that issue in the horse and buggy versus automobile, how many people lost jobs and how many new jobs were created. Changed the world, for good or bad. It changed the world with many more jobs and opportunities, profits. Yeah, I think it's going to turn a lot of industries upside down. While I catch my breath, I want to ask you that question, Marcia. What do you see how AI is going to affect the job market? Because I'm a glass is half full kind of guy. I think that for every lost opportunity, there's going to be 10 new opportunities that either didn't exist or people didn't think about because they were spending too much time and energy, chasing that ball down that can getting kicked down the road instead of coming up with something new. But what do you think's going to happen? I mean,
I don't know, but I'm not scared, because I think that I tell my students and I tell the lawyers, this is the best time to be a lawyer. What an exciting time to be here at the inception, when you have the ability to shape what it looks like. And I know Elon Musk and others came out saying, we've got to put a halt for 6 months. You can't do that. It's already gone. So lawyers and business people and students and legislators that don't sit there and they don't have to know how it works, like you said, but they have to understand the capabilities and the skills, project management, creative thinking, being able to pivot, being able to foresee trends, design thinking. I teach a design thinking class at the University of Miami to freshmen. That's the stuff that's going to help you not be scared, because when you think about how can I use this? I use ChatGPT for every day, but I also know enough to know when it's not, but it saves me a lot of time on certain things, right? And so that's the key. It's a game changer. What's going to happen for lawyers that have to depend on the billable hour, that's where they're going to be worried, right? Right now you could already draft a contract in 5 minutes using, different kinds of AI powered things on Westlaw. So it's not that new. It's just a matter of what's the value that you have as a lawyer? What's the value that you bring as a business person? And it is that emotion, it is that human connection, because AI can't replace that yet. Now, let me ask you my last question, because I know we have.
You haven't met some of the same lawyers I've met. I've already experienced more emotion from some of my AI prompts than some lawyers I stood next to in court. And let me just, before we get to the last question, here's the thing. It's here. It's not going anywhere. I remember, like, once again, back in the early days, lawyers kicking and screaming about the fax machine, kicking and screaming about the internet and everything else that we've already talked about. I think the smart lawyers and business owners and entrepreneurs, investors, what they're going to do is wrap their arms around this new technology, embrace it, and figure out, how can I use this technology to do bigger and better things, to create better client experiences, to create better client or customer results. I think the companies that approach it through that lens are setting themselves up for huge wins down the road. And I think those lawyers that, refuse to use email and refuse to hop on a Zoom, you know what? They're going to be left behind and they're going to be forgotten. And I don't want to see any of our fellow attorneys, because I think we play we're such a valuable component to a healthy society, in my opinion. And I want to see all of our fellow lawyers embrace this technology and leverage this technology, because what I found is that when a lawyer figures this out, because of how our brains are wired, because of how we speak, because of our communication skills that we learn in law school, because of our objective analysis and left and right brain interaction with everything that we do, the lawyers are the ones that I think are just killing it in a good way on these platforms. Yes. They're just really, really good at everything that we've talked about. Can I share something that I'm not plugging my latest book, but I want to make it available to you and your community absolutely free, because I think it's
that's wonderful.
I mean, I really
agree,
mean
and that's fantastic.
I wrote this not to make money selling it. I wrote it because I want to plant seeds in lawyers' minds moving forward. What should we be focusing on? In other words, as these technologies roll out and start taking up jobs, what do we need to focus on? And so the McKinsey report came out last year, and it talked about the top 14 trends changing the world. So I wrote this book. Let me put it up here. And I don't know if it's reversed at your end. Can you read that?
I can say it. From AI to Blockchain, 4 technology trends every lawyer must know, by Mitch Jackson.
Okay, so I use ChatGPT to help me write this. It says, with the help of AI, right there. But what we did is we broke down the 14 top technology, science, and business trends that are changing the world. Every single lawyer and law firm can look and mold their practice around one or more of these trends. One happens to be the metaverse. One has to be, obviously artificial intelligence. But there are a lot of other things that are happening right now in real time before our eyes. And frankly, they're all working together. AI is helping us when it comes to space travel. The metaverse is helping us when it comes to new marketing and branding opportunities for large corporations wanting to reach a whole new set of customers or clients. And, this, in my opinion, this book right here, if lawyers build their practices around one or more of these 14 trends moving forward. And, I've shared this with my daughter, who's a 4th year at Shepherd Mullen, right? She's a new lawyer. She's, she's just really doing well. She just got the nickname yesterday. She just had her first trial last week, Marcia. And just dominated, right? So yesterday they had a firm getaway, and one of the senior managing partners who she had never met before came up to her and said, "So AJ, I hear your new nickname is Little Viper. And we're proud of you," right? And she's like, called me, is that good or bad, Dad? I said, that's a compliment for a litigator.
That's a compliment.
Because it's like, but I was telling AJ, these are the things that you want to pay attention to because they're changing the world. You can look the other way because, frankly, it takes a little bit of time and effort to get up to speed on these technologies. But that's why I wrote the book. in 5 or 10 minutes in one chapter, you can get up to speed. And let me just tease your listeners real quick on some of the technologies here. We have applied AI, which is somewhat similar to what you and I were talking about. Advanced connectivity, where all things are speaking and talking to each other. Bioengineering, clean energy, mobility, Web3, sustainable consumption, cloud and edge computing, industrialized machine learning, immersive reality technologies, which includes the metaverse, trust architectures and digital identity, which we have touched upon. You did a good job on this podcast, Marcia. We touched upon many of these already. Space technologies, quantum technologies, next generation software development. All of these things require contracts and licenses and IP law, litigation attorneys to help support the development and advancement of these technologies. That's what I'm excited about. I wish I was 20 years old starting my practice off again, because we'd be handling every single one of these subject matters. Okay, next question.
I'm not going to ahead. My next question was
a hard one.
No, the last question, and the questions I ask everybody is, what book, other than your own, or movie, or song, or something, or mantra has really affected you that you'd like to use to inspire someone else, other than something you've already written?
Two things. One, each morning when I drop the kids off, and we used to take them to school each day, especially starting about in middle school, is I'd ask them, all right, AJ and Garrett, what are you going to do today? And they'd look back at me and they say, Dad, we're going to make today our masterpiece. And the famous coach John Wooden, right? Make each day your masterpiece. So I think regardless of how we feel, lawyers, or we're in a business, we're in a profession, there can be a lot of stress. There can be a lot of challenges, especially if you are sincere about helping your clients get through oftentimes the most challenging moment of their lives. That's why they're in front of us. That's why they need us. Is I want everyone to know that the sun rises tomorrow morning. Treat what we're doing almost as a game. It reduces the stress. It allows you to perform better in court. And if you strive to make each day your masterpiece, I think it's just a good reminder of the balance and the internal intent that we need to bring to the table each day. Number one. Number two, when it comes to books, I honestly feel my friend Bob Berg, who's the co-author of the Go Giver series of books. Well, Bob wrote another book that not too many people talk about, and it's called Adversaries into Allies. And it's a people skills book. It's a book where he shares a lot of personal stories that he, and his father's stories about how to get along with other people, and why do people say what they're doing, and why do we make the decisions that we make, right? And I thought what was interesting is for trial lawyers, oftentimes what we hear someone say from the witness stand, or what opposing counsel may say in court, we have to understand that there's more to the dynamics of what somebody says or does. Why are they acting the way they're doing? How can we respond in a way that helps us get to that desired end result? Adversaries into Allies is a book that, and I mentor a lot of young trial lawyers. I'm at the point in today's world where if they want my help with getting ready for trial or whatever it may be, they need to read this book first, because it's going to set them apart from every other lawyer in down at the courthouse who hasn't read it. And then they need to take action. Reading something's one thing, but then practicing and taking action on the principles, the 5 principles that Bob shares. Those are 2 things that made a big impact in my career and my life, Marcia. And so I'm glad you asked me that. Thank you.
I'm glad. And on that note, we have gone way over that I thought, but I knew that we would have a lot to talk about. This may end up being a 2-part episode, but I want to thank you so much, Mitch. And how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to follow you? I know you have so many different platforms you're on. How can they follow you? Because now I'm sure they're fascinated and want to keep learning from you.
Well, I hope so, because I love meeting new people. So probably, let's meet in the metaverse, everyone. But the easiest place to start the journey is just jump over to my blog, mitchjackson.com. And from there are links, contact information. We can start the digital dance beginning at the blog. And it's always a pleasure, Marcia, to spend time with you, to spend time with your community. Time went by like that, but it's the best hour of my week, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And everybody stay tuned. Make sure you check the show notes. We're going to have links to all the things that Mitch mentioned. And you really are doing yourself a disservice if you say, I'll think about that next year, because by the time you guys hear this, it might be on Chat GPT 14. You never know, and things are moving quickly. So thanks again, Mitch, for bringing this to everyone's attention and to help really get the legal profession up to speed. Because without good lawyers, there will be truly chaos. And on that happy note, we're going to end here. Take care, Mitch. Thanks again.
Thank you, Marcia. My pleasure.
Okay. Stop. Thanks so much for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you like what you heard, subscribe and share it with others.